Welcome everyone to our webinar today. My name's Angela. I'm with ProFarm Group, and our webinar today is on optimizing crop performance in strawberries with Illustria. ProFarm Group is a publicly traded company through our parent company, Bioseries Crop Solutions. This webinar is for educational purposes only, and should you be interested in investing in Biox stock, we encourage you to do your own due diligence. First, I'd like to introduce our speakers. We have our guest speaker today, Brett Ferini. He is a fifth-generation farmer from Rancho Laguna Farms, in Santa Maria Valley. Brett and his family farm strawberries, caneberries, lettuce, broccoli, and cauliflower, and they farm a total of 2,000 acres. About 430 of those acres are strawberries, both conventional and organic. Brett is a talented young grower with a lot of experience using organic practices on his conventional farming acres to improve their production year over year. And Brett's going to be talking about how he's used this technology on his strawberries. Our next speaker, who will actually start out the presentation today, is Seth Little. He's a product manager for fertilizers and adjuvants at ProFarm Group. Seth is a 12th generation American farmer and a 5th generation Purdue grad. He was raised on a cattle farm and irrigated row crop farm in Northwest Indiana and brings 2 decades of experience as an agronomist and a lifetime of raising corn, soy, wheat, sorghum, seed corn, popcorn, and sunflowers. Early in his career, Seth was a retail agronomist for Growmark and Cargill, where he found a knack for safe and effective herbicide recommendations. Then he moved into seed management as the Northeast U.S. business manager for Syngenta Cereals, AgroPro wheat breeding program. Later on, as a seed corn production agronomist for Pioneer, the knack for herbicides led a move to DuPont Crop Protection as a technical agronomist, where he worked with Pioneer sales reps and seed growers on seed and herbicide bundling programs and field calls. It was during this time Seth was operating a no-till cover crop cash rent grain farm near his family farm in Indiana. And after the Dow-DuPont merger, his role was eliminated, so Seth farmed full-time and sold Pioneer seed with his uncle until the industry called him back for a very different role in research and development and technical sales for granular and powder formulations of crop protection chemicals and biologicals. Working in the biological sector combined with soil and water health farming practices have led to a paradigm shift towards regenerative farming practices. And today Seth offers experience of the needs of both conventional and organic farming operations. So as you can hear, Seth has a wealth of information and really understands both organic and conventional farming systems. And he is truly an expert in some of our technology. So Seth will be talking more in detail about the Illustria and the technology behind Illustria today. I'd also like to introduce John, who is the territory sales manager for the Central Coast of California. John brings over 3 decades of agronomic experience to his role at ProFarm. He is a 4th generation family farm and has devoted his career to agriculture. John has held various diverse roles over the years, farming on his family farm as well as J.G. Boswell Company. He's worked in consulting and agronomy retail for 10 years with Servitech, Farmland Industries in Helena, and a regional sales manager and almond crop manager for 10 years with Yara North America. He also served as a technical sales manager for 6 years at Alltech and Vallegro before joining ProFarm Group. John has a BS in agronomy from Iowa State University and has been a certified crop advisor and a California Ag Pest Control Advisor for the past 23 years. And while not pictured, I do want to introduce our 4th speaker, Taylor Hoover, who is now the sales manager for the western part of the U.S. for ProFarm Group. Really quickly, I just want to share that Taylor also brings a wealth of information and crop management experience, and particularly strawberries. He spent 5 years with Farm Fuel, Inc., a leader in organic soil inputs to control soil-borne plant pests, with an expanding responsibility from field technician to research and consulting manager to eventually general manager. Then he spent time at Acadian Health, Plant Health, a producer of proprietary marine plant extracts for crop health, and as a key account manager before joining ProFarm Group. Taylor has a BS in Agriculture and Environmental Plant Sciences with a concentration in fruit science from Cal Poly San Luis Obispo. All right, so there's our speaker lineup, a wealth of information here. So please, we encourage these webinars to be as interactive as possible. Of course, the best thing would be we're all in a room together talking and sharing stories, but this is the next best thing. So please don't hesitate to post your questions in the chat and interact with one another in the chat so we can all learn from one another. Today, we're going to review 5 things. I'm going to give you a little brief overview of ProFarm Group. If you've never heard of us, or perhaps you're not familiar with the new name, then I'm going to hand it over to Seth, and he's going to talk about UBP Technology, which is the science behind Illustria. Seth will continue on and explain Illustria and its unique benefits before handing it off to Taylor, who will talk about the experience he's had with Brett testing Illustria on their strawberries. And finally, John will talk about other IPM programs for strawberries, because if you're growing strawberries, we want to make sure to provide you with a well-rounded offering for your entire crop. So first, a little bit about ProFarm. We have a vision to improve the world through agriculture. And we do this through discovering, developing, and commercializing the most innovative, biologically based crop solutions that promote sustainable farming practices. Our headquarters are in Davis, California. We have US manufacturing in Bangor, Michigan. Most of our products are US made. And we also have operations in Europe. Our parent company is based in South America. The parent company's name is Bioseries Crop Solutions, and we merged with them back in July 2022. Our merge has been the result of creating the global leader in biological crop solutions. And we specialize in 3 particular areas: crop protection, crop health, and crop nutrition. While many of you may know us for our work in specialty crops, we actually have a global presence, and our 23% of the world's soybeans are actually treated with ProFarm inoculants. We're on over 75 million acres with our seed treatment technologies. And together with our parent company, we have over 45 years of experience innovating with biologicals. This is our California product portfolio. We have fungicides, bactericides, and disinfectants with Jet Egg and Jet Oxide. Our fungicides are Regalia and Stargus. Many people know Regalia. John's going to be talking a little bit more about these products at the end. We have insecticides and nematicides, Grandevo, Majesty, and Venerate. Haven for crop stress. And what we're going to be talking about today, Illustria, a foliar fertilizer. We consider ourselves the pioneers in biologicals. We were the leaders, one of the first to discover and develop biologicals in the US. We're research and development focused. Our early years were research and development focused. We have over 18,000 microbials in our database. We bring value to partners throughout the industry through our patented technology. We have over 500 issued and pending patents. We're farmer focused. We provide products for every application, crop, and farm type. And we're trusted. We have been a partner with some of the most recognized names in crop protection for many years. A little bit more about how we're farmer focused and talking about products and programs available for all farm types. For those of you that are organic, we have OMRI approved products, and we provide IPM programs, our solutions that include other OMRI approved products, not just ours. We know we're not the only solution out there, and we really try to focus on what's going to be best for the farmer. And of course, our crop consultants and PCAs, as you've heard from the bios today, many of them have expertise in organic or regenerative agriculture practices. We also realize that 99% of the US farmland is conventional. And so we have IPM programs that utilize biologicals to help enhance the efficacy of traditional chemistry. This aids in resistant management and helps displace pesticides that might have restricted use or maybe have concerns about safety, while still providing that 0-day PHI for late season applications. And lastly, all of our growers, whether they're organic, regenerative, or conventional, benefit from our proprietary or unique technologies, benefit from our more than 3,000 global field trials. We understand that sometimes biologicals have a range of results, and we want to make sure that the products that we provide you are consistent. We understand that's important, and so we're constantly testing our products. And then, of course, what we think is one of our greatest values is our team of committed crop consultants and PCAs who are really here to help solve your problems, hopefully with some of our products. But if our products aren't the right solution, we're going to try our best to point you in the right direction. Now I'd like to hand it over to Seth, who's going to talk more about UBP Technology, the science behind Illustria.
Thank you, Angela. So very excited to present the technology platform we call UBP. It stands for Universal Biological Platform. So with this platform, we can introduce the technology into different seed treatments, foliar fertilizers, a whole range of different applications for the grower and commercial products. So the background of UBP was developed to sustain life in space. So the joint USSR-US space program called Apollo-Soyuz, or Soyuz, I don't know how you say that really, was trying to figure out how do we save weight. First of all, because shipping food into space is very challenging. Everything about a space program is cutting weight, developing new technologies to save weight and to be efficient in space. So Dr. Igor Taganov was tasked with how do we raise food in this harsh environment? With zero gravity, how do you get a seed to germinate where the hypocotyl and the epicotyl know which way to go? And then how do you feed that plant in space? With efficient fertilizer, with efficient water use, and bring that plant all the way to a harvestable crop. So the space program shut down in the 90s. Dr. Taganov brought the technology to Finland and founded a company called ProFarm, which is where we have our name today. In 2018, we created a new formulation. So the original formulation was a dry, a powder or a salt. And the new formulation is a liquid, very low use rate, very highly concentrated, and more easily implemented into agriculture. In 2019, we brought UBP technology to the United States. And in 2020, Corteva launched a seed treatment product called Impact across all of their canola, sunflower, and wheat products. And they're going to continue to bring that seed treatment technology globally. So what did he create? This is a patented nutrient technology. This is a complex, stabilized biopolymer. It's not lignite, it's not lignosulfonate, it's not leonardite, it's not peat, it's not seaweed. This is a new class of biologically active molecules. Part of what he did was try to mimic the molecular weight that most closely related to soil, humus, and water. So the polymer is something that the plant recognizes as friendly, is easily absorbed and bioavailable. It contains nutrients, and part of what the polymer does is chelates nutrients. These are highly mobile. The technology itself is highly mobile in the plant, so it can be applied foliar or through the soil. Go ahead to the next one, Angela. So I want to talk about 3 key features of this technology. One is an increase in cell division, which we call mitosis. The next is an increase in photosynthetic activity and chlorophyll biosynthesis. And finally, an increase in abiotic stress management or antioxidant activity. There are 2 basic ways a plant increases biomass. One is through cell elongation, which you see from PGRs or hormones like auxin and gibberellin that elongate the cell and fill the vacuole with water. And the other is through cell division, which is a secondary process to cell elongation. So how do we trigger that cell into dividing and creating a functional cell. On the left-hand side, this is from a garlic meristem. We use garlic because it's easy to look at in the microscope. And you can see the increase in mitosis. So all these new cells are functional cells. Each of these cells contain mitochondria. And as you know, mitochondria is the powerhouse for the plant. Produces ATP and all kinds of enzymes that the plant needs. Go ahead, Angela. So yes, UBP technology primes the plant to create more cells. More cells equals more power plants. So more functional activity, more above ground and below ground biomass. This just illustrates that the increase in mitotic index percentage. What we see in the bottom left is another benefit where we're not only acidifying the cell walls within the plant, but we're causing the roots to exude organic acids, which also trigger the root hairs to elongate and divide. So we're creating more root hairs at the root apical meristem, and we're creating more above ground mass at the shoot apical meristem, which translates into more buds, more leaf material. In the bottom right, you can see just an illustration of this in corn, and the same thing here with the strawberries. Sorry, yeah, we can go to the strawberries. So again, this is universal. We see the same activity in every crop: an increase in root mass, an increase in biomass, an increase in yield. So in 2021, at Davis, at our headquarters, we did a qPCR study, which is an RNA sequencing study to discover where the UBP technology is functioning within the DNA and different pathways within the plant. Go ahead, Andrew. These are some of the photosynthetic pathways that we have verified that we're active on. And a lot of these are very critical to plant health. So increased chlorophyll biosynthesis, terpenoids, or some of the tetraterpenoids are the building blocks for a lot of the critical functions within the plant, flavonoids, things like that. And on the right-hand side, we can see a visual representation of what it does. This is a cornfield. This is all the same hybrid. But on the left of that picture is fungicide alone, and on the right is fungicide plus UBP. And we should note that the response within the plant is almost immediate. We can observe it within 6 hours after application. Okay, so the next key benefit is a reduction in oxidative damage. So we're all familiar with antioxidants and their roles in our bodies, but oxidative stress really is what destroys cells. So cell necrosis, which puts a big stress on the body or on the plant. And what UBP does is increase antioxidant enzymes. Go ahead, Angela. So oxidative stress will have a negative impact on chlorophyll. You'll see it with necrosis in the leaf. You'll see it in stunted growth. Some of that necrosis could be a vector for disease, for bacteria and for fungi to enter the plant through a weakness. Lower Brix, because that energy is being put elsewhere in the plant to adjust for the stress. Smaller, more bitter berries, lack of uniformity in general. So these are the pathways that we identified that work on the antioxidant on the antioxidant pathways. The most critical being catalase, which converts cellular hydrogen peroxide into water. So the higher the catalase, the higher the antioxidant activity. It just prepares that plant to resist abiotic stress. It could be herbicides, it could be wind damage and sandblasting, that could be heat stress and drought. Catalase functions all through those different stresses. We use herbicides. Sorry, go back a little bit. We like to use herbicides to put a measurement or a metric on this activity because it's very easy to induce abiotic stress. This example with the graph was a PPO herbicide on soybeans, which which causes a lot of phytotoxicity. So it's a great way to measure how UBP reduces that oxidative stress. T-bars is another way we can measure oxidative damage. So the lower the T-bar, the lower the oxidation on the cell. So we can see here, this again, PPO herbicide on soybeans, a decrease in 25% with UBP in one trial, 11% in another. So free radicals attack the lipid structures of the cell, which weakens the cell wall and makes that plant more susceptible to the stress. This was, I believe, at the end of, right before they were going to destroy these strawberry beds. On the left was treated early season with UBP, and on the right, this is the same field. You can just see the difference. You would almost want to save that crop on the left, but just a nice illustration of what it did throughout the season towards the end of that strawberry's life cycle. So that leads us to Illustria. We're launching Illustria on the West Coast. Illustria is our foliar fertilizer. It contains 2% potassium, cobalt, molybdenum, and 13 other micro and essential nutrients. This can be foliar applied or soil applied. The rate is 16 ounces per acre. I like to concentrate on early season to get that plant off to a good start, help it canopy over, get the root established, get those roots exuding into the soil to solubilize nutrients, get the most out of the grower's dollar that's spent on fertilizer. So through the drip tape is a great application. Foliar is my preferred application, but ease of use is the key. Low use rate and ease of use. So Illustria will do many of the benefits that UBP technology is known for. Increase cells, increase functional cells, increase biomass, higher bricks within the fruit, which I think we're going to get to later here. Nutrient use efficiency I touched on slightly. So this is through a cell or root exudation, solubilizing nutrients that are in the soil near the root zone, as well as the increase in root hairs. All that surface area and intercepting those nutrients that are in the soil, as well as chelating those nutrients that are in the soil and making them bioavailable. It's compatible with most fertilizers. I would do a jar test if you're going to mix it directly with a high phosphate or a high sulfur liquid fertilizer. But in general, if you're diluting those and applying them through drip tape, there should be no problem with compatibility. It's also highly compatible with herbicides and tank mix, as well as other biologicals, fungicides, insecticides. So very easy to implement into a grower's program, into an existing application. Here we see an increase in fruit size, color. So we're seeing, that's going to illustrate the increase in flavonoids and in bricks, as well as more berries. We put on more buds early in the season, we get more berries later on. This is a nice image that I believe Taylor took with a drone at Brett's farm. So this was, I can't remember if this one was through chemigation or foliar, but either way, you can see a very clear response in the control versus the grower standard versus the Illustria applied. And with that, I'm going to lead to Taylor. Taylor's going to introduce Brett. And thank you for your time listening.
Thanks, Seth. It's a good explanation of the science behind Illustria, and really excited to be here and talk about Illustria. I feel that it's been a long time coming, and I think I can speak for Brett when I say it feels like it's been forever. We actually started working with this product at Brett's farm almost a year ago. It's hard to believe. But I just wanted to welcome and thank Brett for taking the time out of his busy schedule to be here to talk about his experience with Illustria, as I think it's a really important one to encompass. So Brett, if you wouldn't mind, why don't you just tell us all a little bit about yourself and your farm, and your role and how we have gotten to where we are.
So I'm Brett Ferini. I grow our strawberries for my family's farm, Rancho Laguna Farms. I also help out with our vegetable production a little bit, but main focus has been strawberries about the last 5 years. We used to have a higher presence in organic strawberries. We do 2 cycles in Santa Maria. One is what we call spring harvest, and the other one's fall harvest. So those have 2 very different planting windows. The spring harvest will plant in October, November, so getting ready to plant those coming up. And then our off cycle is planted in the summer, June and July, with just kind of how the markets have gone and some of our soil health. We've actually gotten out of organic production in the springtime, and now we just have organic in the fall harvest crop. So where we kind of did our trial was an old organic field where we'd had, just a lot of problems. It's blow sand, and definitely would have die out in the organic. So we decided to convert that over to conventional, and that's where we tried Illustria, and it was a lot of begging for, hey, let's end this trial and start hitting the whole field with it. It definitely, I've done a lot of trials, and it was the most easily observed, and the data behind it, it was incredible. So
Can you talk a little bit about some of the products that you were utilizing before you tried Illustria, and not necessarily ProFarm products, but some of the ones that maybe you had positive or negative experiences with before we kind of transitioned over into Illustria?
yeah, so on the conventional side, we fumigate all of our berry ground. So all that either has pit chlor. We've kind of been moving more to Vapam. It's metam sodium. It gives us, it's a lot cheaper, helps with weeds, and I've seen pretty good disease control with it. There's still a lot more data coming out. Using the both is the preferred, hitting a pit chlor than a Vapam. But that is very expensive, so we don't do that very often. Then, as we get on with the season, we've used, Ridamil is really good for Phytophthora and does seem to give the plant a little kind of bounce back just from stresses. Our biggest, I'd say, philosophy is it all starts with the irrigation. If you irrigate poorly, either over or under, your plant's going to get stressed, and that's where we do see a lot of secondary or tertiary plant die out. If the plant's healthy and happy, the macrophamina is not going to hit it as hard, if at all. Same with Fusarium, Phytophthora, all these diseases that can be devastating. It's really a stress management from our perspective. So we've used Acadian. We used to do rice bran every year to go through ASD and try and disinfect the soil. We've used Stargus, Jet Ag's pretty big in our program, foliar and through the soil. Different humics. I think we've probably tried 12 different humics, and now we've actually lowered our humic usage, and we're going more, just moving away from it. It's a little bulky, and we have some other products. It's called Peptone and Prostem is our main fertilizer, and we've used that to replace the humics. So pretty wide range. Most of the trials, there's nothing very exciting, and so Either it'll match or be a little bit better than our grower standard, and then we look at pricing. So if it's the same and cheaper, we'll switch. If it's the same and more expensive, we'll keep going with our program. And in the event there are some yield and plant health benefits, normally we'll switch and try and figure out how to fit that into our program.
And so where would you see Illustria? Do you see Illustria as an addition to your program, or would you see it more as a replacement for one of the products you mentioned?
I would say an addition, and we have been playing with it for a year, but I think there's still a lot to learn from it. As far as our soil applied fungicides like the Ridamil, we have been able to kind of get away from that a bit. So we do practice IPM. So if we're not seeing a problem, we're not going to treat a problem. And that, I think you'll see some benefits in there. Our fertility, we're trying to reduce our nitrogen inputs just from the state and regional water boards coming out with new regulations. So I think our goal is become more efficient, be better on our timing. And so in that aspect, I think the Illustria has been an add-in for us, and then continue to find better fertilizers that provide more boost for the plant with less units of nitrogen.
Excellent. Well, let's dig into the demo that we conducted. This demo was, again, from about a year ago. Back in October, I believe, is when we started it. And this was a summer planting in Guadalupe, which is near Santa Maria, from the Santa Maria Valley there. And we were making the application on the Portola variety. Hey Brett, can you tell us anything about Portola? Any sorts of common issues you have, some of the pros and cons of Portola versus some of the other varieties? I know there's plenty of varieties out there.
Yeah, so Portola is actually a relatively hardy variety. It is relatively resistant to Fusarium, which is a common soil-borne disease, especially if you get into ranches that have not had the best rotations or are coming out of organic. That was actually why we moved away from rice bran. As it's decomposing, it feeds the Fusarium. It is a very high yielding variety, doesn't taste very good, low bricks, big beautiful fruit, but it really doesn't eat well. For the public varieties, it's kind of been the gold standard in the University of California system on the off-cycle plantings. There's definitely a new wave of varieties coming through that now we're playing with, but probably for 7 years, Portola's been the most fruit from the fall coming out of Santa Maria that's non-Driscoll's has been Portola.
Awesome. So if you recall, we decided to make two different types of applications. At the time, for everybody's knowledge, we were not entirely sure where the best way, what the best way of application was for this product in strawberries at the time. And so we landed on making the 16 fluid ounces per acre every 2 weeks, but we wanted to better understand whether it would be more efficient to use it as a foliar spray or through the drip in a fertigation application. So we split 4 acres. 2 of the acres were foliar and 2 acres were fertigation, chemigation, however you want to look at that. And then we had about 14 acres of untreated Portola to compare against. And if I can recall, and Brett, please feel free to chime in, but one of the biggest concerns here was J-rooted plants. The crews had kind of come in a little bit fast and thrown the plants in the ground so that the roots were facing upward when they got placed in. And what that does is it typically stunts the plant growth, creating slow growth and weak plants. And there was also a really low spot problem area for drainage, which we confirmed with the Cal Poly San Luis Obispo pathology lab that macrophamina was present. And then we also treated some healthy areas as well. Is there anything else you wanted to add to that, Brett?
Just part of, so that ranch used to be organic, and the reason we pulled it out of organic was the previous year we had macrophamina, fusarium, and phytophthora issues that we fought pretty much year round. And so we decided to fume it and come back in a conventional system. So yeah, it was definitely a historically rough ranch that we were farming.
So this field was treated with VAPAM, or what was the fumigation that you utilized?
It was 2 shots of VAPAM. So we go first shot, and then 7 to 10 days after we'll go again. VAPAM needs really good, it only moves where the water moves. And so we found with the double application, you're able to really push the water all the way out to the shoulders. On diseases like macrophamina, that's normally where you'll see it start, is on the edge of the beds. That's with pichlor or VAPAM. It's normally because you don't get the fumigant all the way out to the plastic. And so we've had a lot better success with 2 applications.
Excellent. And just for clarity for everybody, all of the acres that were treated and untreated were all fumigated and treated as grower standard, and we simply added in Illustria for the foliar and fertigation blocks. So here's a aerial satellite photo of the fields that we were playing with, and you'll see that the yellow highlighted was the area where we did a foliar applications, 2 acres foliar application of Illustria on Portola, directly next to the untreated Portola 2 acres. And then on the far right, you'll see that there was an additional 14 acres of untreated Portola. And if we click one more time, we will see that that is where the soil application came in. And I recall Brett really wanting me to only make the application right where that problem area was. But we convinced him to do a strip, so we got a little bit of the healthy ground and the problem area. But I had mentioned earlier that there was a low spot that was having some drainage issues, and that's highlighted there in the red. And that'll be important later when we take a look at some of the field photos. So here are some drone photos of the foliar application. And you can just see here, well, I'll let Brett talk you through kind of what he noticed as a grower walking through that field, because I remember the phone call he gave me, but I'll let Brett talk about it.
Yeah, so most soil-borne diseases, I kind of hit on it, are stress related. So after planting, things will look good. When the plants start producing fruit, that is a serious stress they're undergoing. And so right before peak, that's normally where you'll start seeing die out, stunting. You know, plant that looked beautiful 3 weeks ago now looks like it's kind of on the brink, and you can see on the grower standard all the small plants, not quite the totally dead ones, but even the ones going down, they really pull back down, and it's not a good feeling. And going through the Illustria, both the foliar and the chemigation, it was pretty night and day. You know, we had flags in the field, but you did not need them. It was to the bed. And yeah, I think it was maybe 5 weeks after we started, I did ask. I said, "Hey man, like I need to put this on the whole field because we're gonna really lose our ass on the control here." Um, so fruit size was better, flower looked good, and die out was, I don't know, 85% less than we had in our control group.
Yep. And if we move to the next slide, here's just a photo for reference of the soil application, and it's very similar results. And I know that I believe we'll have some yield slides here as well, but Brett, why don't you talk a little bit about the difference you noticed from the foliar side to the soil side, and what you ultimately decided to do with that product moving forward.
So we noticed, I'd say, a more immediate response, surprisingly, on the chemigation. So the plants perked up a little bit quicker, and our yields were higher on the chemigation versus the foliar. Both were higher than the standard throughout, from 2 weeks after we had higher yield, mainly driven by size at first, and then eventually just overall fruit and size was increased. I want to say about after the third application, so 6 weeks in, we did start seeing the foliar catching up, and then by the middle of the trial to the end of the trial, the foliar kept passing the chemigation. The strawberries, they'll throw flowers pretty constantly, and by the time you see that flower till it's a fruit is about 30 days. So that, just by my observations, that kind of explained where the foliar just lagged a little bit more as the plant was throwing more flowers. But the fruit size, it was pretty immediate, and then add in more plants producing it. We were happy to do either one. So now our program is in the winter, so we'll go 2 weeks after planting. We'll do our first chemigation application, try and get it right into the roots. And we also, that's our wet season typically, is from December to March. So it's a lot harder to get in with our spray rigs. Depending on the year, we'll do either 3 to 4 applications chemigation, and then switch to foliar every 2 weeks. This year was a wet year, so we actually had more chemigation apps than I'd say our program is, but did not seem to hurt us at all. Especially you have really wet fields, that is going to stress a lot of your young plants out.
So in other words, you're being very conscious to make sure the Illustria is getting out there on a regular basis, regardless whether whatever's easiest for you. It could be the soil, it could be through the rigs, spray rigs, but it's a necessity for you.
In our fall harvest, which we just planted June and July, obviously we have less rain then, so there we did do 3 applications chemigation, and then switched to our foliar applied.
Awesome. Can we go to the next slide, please? So this is where I wanted to really highlight that problem area at the bottom of the field that you all saw earlier. So you can tell that even, so that area was only a soil applied chemigation. But you can really tell, and I remember walking the field so vividly, there was a very distinct line of where the Illustria was applied and was not applied. And it looked like almost 80, maybe 90% dieback in the untreated in that area. And so here's some aerial footage or aerial drone shots of just what that looked like with the Illustria and the grower standard. And I just think it's important to note that, although the plants don't look as robust as they did in the healthy areas, they certainly are having a whole lot less die out. And I'll let Brett talk a little bit about his experience as he walked through that problem area.
Yeah, the day I called Taylor asking, I was walking the field with my dad, and I was impressed. I'm like, hey man, we have a trial, this thing works. And that was his first question is, well, why aren't we doing it on everything? Because our problem areas are huge problems. Definitely did not make money in any of those areas. And so it was the biggest light bulb moment I've had as a grower. You know, it's just like, this can help us when nothing else really seemed to. And yeah, it was crazy. Fruit where there shouldn't have been fruit.
All right, let's move on. Brett was actually there when I took these samples. We took them together to make sure there was no bias involved, but these were just randomly selected plants. We tried to select a couple of plants that had 2 crowns, but it was really hard to find. You know, I mean, the Illustria side, I remember it being so uniform and robust, and then the untreated it was almost hard to find good plants to pull from. So it was like on one side we had so many healthy plants, it was hard to not be biased, and then the other side it was hard to find some plants healthy enough to compare against. So yeah, that was a special moment for me. I remember. And you can just tell the foliage is just much more robust in the root zone as well. And anytime you have more roots, I think you're going to have you know, more fruit, more flower, and everything else that goes along. Do you have any additional thoughts on that, Brett?
Yeah, just, I mean, even in the picture you can see, you know, the white flower, and there, once the plant gets stressed, strawberry plants don't like to produce sexually. You know, they like to, we call it run, and reproduce asexually. And a stressed plant's going to run more. It's not going to throw out good sized flowers. And yeah, even in the healthier plants we picked out of the grower standard, it was very night and day.
Excellent. So this was a kind of a summary, a short time, a snapshot in time of the yield, if you recall, Brett. And we're looking at the number of crates per acre here in a 3-week period. And so this was weeks 38 to 40 we're looking at as just a snapshot. And if you look on the left, that first bar shows the control was 916 crates per acre in that 3-week period. The chemigation plot was 1,233 crates per acre, and then the foliar plot was 1,336 crates per acre. So clear differences in yield over the control, and possibly even some slight increase in foliar. Do you have any comments on this one, Brett?
No, I'd say that trend, you know, was there during the whole trial too. You know, our last harvested fields were the chemigation foliar when we'd already walked by most of the control.
So you continued to harvest long past, or at least some period of time past when you stopped harvesting the grower standard area.
Yeah, it was about 3 weeks.
About 3-week additional harvest. Okay, great. Do you think that helped you reach any better market windows potentially?
Yeah,
Or yeah,
typically
where
your market, it's in September, it starts to get impacted with more Santa Maria fruit, Oxnard fruit starts coming in. and Salinas Watsonville is still in good stride. So our goal on our fall harvest, which is this cycle that we're looking at, is to try and get to Christmas. So a lot of that is weather dependent. If it's a super wet December, you may not make it. Last year, we actually did have a relatively wet end of fall and winter. But I believe we picked this Portola till first week of January. And the control didn't make it till Christmas this year. We do have other varieties on that field that made it economical for us to keep going into those 4 acres. If it was all, Portola, then we probably would have had to get rid of it all, just because 4 acres isn't quite enough to keep a crew busy.
Interesting. So I believe this is the last slide. Just some additional photos of another time we came out and visited maybe a little bit more healthy field as you continue to experiment with this product. Overall, I'd love to just get your feedback. I think you've alluded to it a lot throughout this conversation, but how do you see Illustria fitting into your program in the future?
Yeah, it's fit in pretty easily. So 100% of our conventional acres were on that fumigation followed by foliar program. We plant every 2 weeks. Even if we don't have, a spray, we'll just go in for the emergent or Illustria. And it hasn't been the most expensive product we've tried, and it really does seem to work. So we'll continue using it, and we've been happy with it.
And I know your responsibility is mostly strictly strawberries. I know you dabble in some of the other crops your family company grows, but we have started to play a little bit with Illustria in some of those other crops. Are there any comments you want to make or thoughts you have about Illustria and some of the other crops that you grow?
Yeah, so one of our biggest vegetable crop revenue wise is iceberg lettuce. It has some similarities in the disease profiles as strawberries, a lot of fusarium and other issues we're fighting in the lettuce. There's new varieties, everything. You can be resistant to fusarium, but you might suffer on yield a little bit. And we do have ranches that have trouble areas. You have a 100-acre ranch and it has 12 acres that we've been fighting for the last 2 or 3 years. We do rotate. The brassicas are a really good rotation crop for us. But we've definitely started putting it on the lettuce, and my gut is in the next probably month, for sure next year, that'll become part of our standard. What we want to play with more is the vegetables are a lot shorter term crop. So what time intervals and rates do we play with there? But we've definitely seen improvement in some of our trouble areas. And my expectation is as we get into some more harvest on them, even the fine areas, we should see a little better response, just keeping the plants from stressing out on us.
Perfect. So thanks again, Brett, for your time. But before you go, before this presentation, you and I had talked a little bit about spotted wing Drosophila, or SWD. As we move into our insecticide and crop protection part of this webinar, I just kind of wanted to preface that conversation with a little bit of your experience, particularly with Biounite and using some of our products in the conventional acres. Some of our organic OMRI certified products in your conventional acres to control spotted wing Drosophila. Can you share some thoughts about that and your experience with it?
Yeah, so spotted wing Drosophila, I don't know, I'm sure most of you know, it's a tiny little vinegar fly. It is turning into enemy number one. It's prolific in the Santa Maria Valley, I'm sure anywhere that has strawberries, very invasive, hard to kill. Our old program, a lot of materials that'll kill Lygus will also kill the Drosophila. And so as our toolbox is getting smaller, neonics and application restrictions, we've really been trying to go soft for most of the year and focus on cultural practices to keep the plants clean. So our kind of go-to this year has been Grandevo and JetAg when we're going on the softer side. And it definitely seems to help keep things clean. No spray alone will get rid of the Drosophila, so it has to be following a spray program, cultivation, and then getting your harvesters to keep the old fruit off the plants. But if you do all three of those, it does seem to be working pretty well. So we're probably 30% less rejects on the Drosophila side of things this year than last year.
That's great news. So it's always good to hear that in the face of more restrictions on chemicals such as neonicotinoids, that some of these biologicals are helping improve farmers' systems and IPM programs beyond just the organic acre, but into the conventional space as well. So we really appreciate you being a pioneer in that, in experimenting that, and truly believe that you're making a difference and paving the way for all the other growers to really follow suit and improve their IPM programs as well. So thank you for that. And I believe that this is the last slide. So thanks again for all of the time that you've committed to not only this webinar, but also to ProFarm and Illustria over the last year. I can't express my gratitude enough, and really appreciate you as a young grower.
Yeah, anytime. Thank you guys. Been happy to play along when there's a big winner like that. So I appreciate it.
Are there any questions for Brett or Taylor on this demo? Looks like we might have one with Illustria. Is there an ideal pH range for the product?
In my experience, I can't say I've played with ideal pH ranges. Maybe Seth has some insight on that.
Are you talking about the tank mix or the soil?
Probably tank mix.
Yeah, there's it's highly soluble. It's a high pH by itself in the tank, but it doesn't affect the pH of the tank mix. It's such a low use rate. It's going to be very diluted in the tank. So we've not seen any interaction with pH.
Okay, we'll keep going. Let's hand it over to John, who's going to talk about IPM programs for strawberries.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Wow, what an incredible addition to the portfolio. That Illustria has been pretty exciting to learn about all summer long since I've joined ProFarm. So it's a great addition to an already strong portfolio. So without further ado, I'm going to jump right into the last segment here and talk to you about our Regalia Biofungicide. It is a great tool to manage fungal and bacterial diseases in strawberries and other key California crops. Regalia is a 5% plant extract of Renutria saccharinensis. Did that okay, I think. Its common name is knotweed. So it's an established product that remains very high performance and high efficacy. It has a couple of different modes of action. It increases photosynthesis and chlorophyll production. It helps to promote the natural plant immunity through the ISR and SAR pathway, which helps prevent the disease from getting going. So it's a frat group 5, so it's a great rotational option. great for the resistance management in your IPM toolbox, and it's great for both organic and conventional production. It's a very versatile product, as many of our products are. You can use it in foliar, you can use it in root dip, and in chemigation. So for foliar application, it has a rate range of 1 to 4 quarts per acre. We recommend that 2 quart per acre rate at the 7 to 10 day interval. At the pre-plant root dip, we do the 2 quart per 100, and in chemigation, we do the 2 quart per acre on 3-week intervals. And you want to do that at least 3 times throughout the season. So that's kind of the basic coverage of Regalia. Next slide we're going to look at is the trial that was done in Ventura County for Dave Holden. He did a check on a standard fertilizer program plus Actinovate, and then 4 other applications of Actinovate after that, and then Regalia and standard fertilizer with another 4 applications at the 4 quart rate. The results of this trial were an extra 320 flats per acre, and it ended up being an extra $1,400 in return on investment. Next. This trial was a pre-plant root dip comparison done in Florida. We compared Regalia to the Actinovate and Serenade on the right. The key takeaway from this slide is that the Regalia provided a really nice protection against the soil-borne diseases that were present, which increased the root growth, and that translated into a nice increased overall growth. Next. Next on the list, we have our Stargus, which is a Scillus liquefaciens product. It's a broad spectrum control, powdery mildew, botrytis, and fusarium. Has some other pests on there. Please look at the label or reach out to one of our TSMs to help position this product if you have any further questions. But it helps to stimulate that plant defenses, helps with the disease prevention. It's in that BMO2 frac group. So again, it's another great rotational tool, great resistance management, and it's great for both organic and conventional. Use rates for this one are 2 to 4 quarts per acre. On the foliar side, 7 to 10 day interval. Tank mix, you want to keep that between 1 and 2 quarts per acre for rotating. The mode of action of Stargus, it's got some active molecules, the peptides, and then that also helps with inducing the systemic acquired resistance and ISR within the plant. And what that eventually does is it helps prevent or to create that protective shield. And so my favorite part of this slide is the Petri dish on the left. And you can see that the top was inoculated with the Stargus. And then you have the botrytis that was added to the Petri dish. And you can see that that botrytis grew up into that position on the point where the Stargus was colonizing and protecting in that area. So you can rest assured that when you apply the Stargus to whether it's a foliar on the leaves or if it's a soil applied, that's going to add that protection to the roots as well. Next slide. This one is Jet Ag 5%. This was kind of mentioned earlier in our talk, and it's a peroxyacetic acid, so it's an oxidizer. It's more effective and more efficient than chlorine. We use chlorine as kind of a comparative because it is another same mode of action. It's highly reactive, it's highly stable, and when you put this out there, it reacts with the contaminants and it converts to water and carbon dioxide. So that helps to create no field residue, and it's also falls in the MRL exemption. So it's great for fungicides, bactericides, and algicides. So one label, you can use it in tank mix combination with the Stargus or Regalia, and now we can add Grandevo to that list as well, based on Brett's experience with that on the spotted winged Drosophila. We can tank mix this product, Jet Ag, with our other biofungicides, a lot of other oxidizers that are on the market are not able to do that. So I'm going to call your attention to the two bars, day 4, Jet Ag plus Stargus, and day 11. I think they're circled in red. I think we need to highlight that. They should pop up there. And so what we're seeing here is the combination of the Jet Ag and the Stargus is the Jet Ag is actually oxidizing and cleaning up that area, and it's allowing for a nice colonization activity of the Stargus paired up with that. And it did have superior activity in the colony forming units versus the Jet Ag or Stargus or untreated checks, anything done alone. Next slide. Now we're going to wrap up into our bioinsecticides, and two that we're going to talk about are the Grandevo and the Venerate. The active ingredient in the Grandevo is a Chromobacterium subtigate, and the Venerate is Burkholderia rhinogensis. They're both broad spectrum. They both feature the ingestion mechanism. The Grandevo is going to have more repellency and reproductive disruption than the Venerate will be having. They both have low impact on beneficials. They're both ONRI listed. They're both 4-hour REI, 0-day pre-harvest. Both have minimal PPE requirement. They're both MRL exempt. The key thing that I'll call out here is the timing and positioning of the two products. The Grandevo, you're going to want to focus in on the egg laying, egg hatching, and adult stage. And the Venerate is going to have more of that post-egg hatch and juveniles present. The 3-pound rate for Grandevo and a 2-pound or 2 quart per acre rate of Venerate. Next one. This study was done on some Monterey variety in San Luis Obispo at Cal Poly, and we compared a couple of different products to the Venerate at 4 quarts. At the 4 quart rate, we had 17% fewer 2-spot spider mite than the untreated. In this trial, we had Venerate going out and comparing its activity on ligas and strawberries, again done at Cal Poly, San Luis, and that resulted, the 4 quart rate resulted in a 44 to 64% fewer ligas versus the alternatives in the trial. Kind of wrapping up, this is just a way to illustrate kind of the best timing to position some of these products. This is by no means all inclusive. If this is something that you like, please reach out to one of our TSMs or myself, and we're happy to put something together that's more prescriptive or customized for your needs. But this kind of calls out to some of the things that we've talked about today. The Regalia is a great option for pre-transplant. So at that 1 to 2 quart per 100, you're going to really be targeting that Fusarium pathogen at that time. If you have a field history of it, it's definitely something you should consider. I think now, based on what I've heard earlier in today's talk, I think we can possibly consider pairing up the Regalia with the Illustria and put that into that pre-transplant water. So definitely we might be able to move that up ahead into the time frame, but I think it's definitely good to get it out there at that establishment phase at the very latest and get that crop off to an early competitive start and fight off those abiotic stresses. So the next ones are Stargus and Jet Ag. You can use those pretty much starting at establishment and kind of move through the season. And then you want to continue on with the Regalia at 1 to 3 quarts, if you have something that pops up later in the season. So I will mention, we didn't really talk a little bit about Magistine, but that's another product. It's our bionematicide. I think that can also be considered as well. So honorable mention to Magistine. So last, we have our foliar program. I think very interesting to hear the differences between the chemigation and the foliar with the Illustria, and want to start at that 16-ounce rate and keep on doing that every 2 weeks throughout the season to have the best results. Stargus and Regalia are great options to throw in your rotation for powdery mildew and botrytis needs. And then also keep in mind we have the Grandevo and the Venerate to go after a plethora of the other key pests that we face in strawberry production. So I think that's it. Thanks for joining us, and I'll pass it back to Angela.
Excellent. Thanks, John. This is another great slide to do a screenshot of if you're needing to identify who your local sales rep is for ProFarm. Again, many of these are certified crop advisors or in California, PCAs, and several of them have experience in both conventional and organic agriculture. So again, we're here to help you with your challenges. And if our products aren't the right solution, we'll endeavor to point you to the right solution. So this is just a little snapshot of our trusted ProFarm team. And then lastly, I'll just open it up to any final questions. Looks like we might have two.
I put a comment, but I think it only went to the host and panelists. But just the final comment on Illustria, it is labeled for all crops, whether it's for food, feed, or human consumption. I like to focus on early season applications that set the crop up for success. It's not a PGR, so you can't really overdo it, but 1 + 1 + 1 + 1 isn't always 4. So early season applications go a long way. And again, it's universal, so applicable to any crop.
Thanks, Seth. And I just want to highlight, I always like to say the questions audibly just in case people are multitasking and moving around and not looking at screens. Jake Wiley asked, are there any compatibility issues with fertilizers or other pesticides? And Taylor answered that he's happy to report there have been no issues with dilute applications of any fertilizers or pesticides. However, we always recommend doing a jar test for complete take mixes. When using Illustria in concentrated applications, low volume foliar applications, you should be cautious of both high sulfur and high phosphorus products.
Yeah, things like ammonium thiosulfate or 1034O, I would be cautious mixing it directly with those. But if you're doing those as a foliar, or if you're adding foliar fertilizers to your tank mix, we're safe. We've not come across any issues. But like Taylor said, a jar test is always a good insurance.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Seth. And I'll just pause here again for any final questions. Otherwise, I appreciate the extra time that you guys have stayed on for today. I know we've gone past time, so appreciate your time and attention. And of course, don't hesitate to reach out if you have any questions about this new technology or any of our other products at ProFarm Group. Thank you for joining us today and have a great day.